It's just.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the, what day is it? May 27th meeting of the Regional Parks and Trails Committee. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are gathering on the traditional and unceded territory of what is now known as the Comox Nation. And as we hold these conversations around land acquisition strategy, we are particularly grateful for their care and stewardship of these lands since time immemorial, and continue to learn about a reciprocal and restorative relationship to these lands. We have an agenda. Do we need to approve the agenda? No, we don't. Okay, so the first item up is our land acquisition strategy schedule. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone opposed to that? I'm seeing no opposition. I will note that we have Director Arbour online and Director Cole Hamilton online. Okay, so I will turn it over to staff to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll introduce Mark Harrison. He's our manager of parks, and Mark will be introducing the report. We're available for discussions to follow. So Mark, over to you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, James. Through the chair to the directors, if it's possible, if we could bring up the PowerPoint, Lisa. I'm here to present the land acquisition strategy and just provide an update to the committee. We have secured the services of Lanark to perform our land acquisition strategy work, so that's good news. Great, thank you. Oh. So just want to kind of give a bit of a presentation, quick overview. I'll just touch on the project methodology as well as the proposed schedule. And then we'll talk quickly about project engagement. So who we're going to involve basically through each of the three phases of the project. And then also just quickly talk about document development. So what's included other than the site selection, which is obviously an important part of the land acquisition strategy. And then quickly touch on what are the projected costs, and then happy to answer any questions at the end. So in terms of project methodology and timeline, it is a three-phase project. In phase one, we'll be looking to develop our candidate sites. And that's from basically taking a large pool of candidate sites, so that's the X's, and kind of pushing it down into 8 candidate sites. So that would be 8 parks and 8 trails. So the number is a little bit fluid there, and until we start to actually delve into the data, we're not going to really know what a reasonable number will be, but we just kind of chosen 8 and then go down to 4 into phase 2. But those can change. So within that first phase, we're going to be looking at the input that we've received through the strategic planning process. So all that public engagement that we've done will be used to help inform these candidate sites, as well as getting input from the working group, which is comprised of staff from each of the local governments. And then also reaching and leaning on a few of our prominent regional land management partners as well to provide input. And we'll start to kind of draft a little bit of the land acquisition components at the start to look at our acquisition principles and maybe some of our other acquisition considerations. And with the ultimate goal of getting it down to that kind of 8 candidate sites for each parks and trails. We're looking at a schedule approximately of now till maybe the end of September. And then at that point, we would move into phase 2, where we would take those candidate sites, that approximate 8, and then try to just crunch it down into 4 parks and 4 trails, which would be our key candidate sites. Through that, we would basically evaluate our key candidate sites using our existing evaluation criteria tool, which was established in our strategic plan, which is our P2 tool. And we would adjust that tool as we go to make sure that it's actually working the way we want it to work, and we'd make refinements along the way. So we get it down to our kind of 4 priority sites. That will probably be October till the end of the year. From that point, we would move into phase 3, and that's where we really start to work on the document itself, as well as bring forward the acquisition recommendations and how we would go about funding those acquisition recommendations. So we're going to start to really, at that point, start to finalize our principles, really look at our processes, and finalize our evaluation framework. And that would be starting next year, looking to go from about January to April. So in terms of engagement, this is just who's going to be involved in each of the three phases. Within Comox First Nation will be involved in each of the three phases. They are a critical partner in this project. And the outline here of the project engagement really underlines the importance of their participation, while also being kind of mindful of their time and resource constraints. So in phase one, we are looking to go to Chief and Council to present to them in July, I believe, with a proposed methodology for engagement, and we'll be seeking their feedback. At the end of phase one, probably in September, we'd be looking to meet with either the Lands Committee or the Chief and Council to seek input on our key candidate sites. In phase two, we'd be looking to meet with Chief and Council and seek input on our priority sites. And then in phase three, we'd be meeting with Chief and Council again to seek input on the draft land acquisition strategy. So really key partners throughout each of the phases of the project. Throughout each of the phases, we'll also be working with the working group. So again, that's staff from each of the local governments, and they're going to be there to really help guide and provide input throughout the whole process. So there is that vehicle for the local governments to provide input at any time throughout the process. The Regional Parks and Trails Committee will also be involved in each of those of these processes. The committee here will be doing the final review at each of those phases, at the end of each phase, and providing initial feedback to inform the next phase of the project. Within phase one, we also will be bringing on a few regional partners that are key land management partners within the region, and providing, we'll be doing interviews with a few of them and trying to gain some critical knowledge that can help us with the candidate site selection. So those would be the Comox Valley Land Trust, the Cumberland Community Forest, Nature Trust, BC Parks Foundation, as well as UROC. We also will be, as part of the process, Tim Ennis will be engaged as a subject matter expert, and will be providing input throughout the whole process. So very fortunate to have Tim on board to help us through the project as well. Tim is Executive Director of the Comox Valley Land Trust and also works doing land acquisition with BC Parks Foundation, for those that don't know him. So we're very lucky to have someone like that regionally that can help us along. In terms of the document development, so these are some of the things that we can kind of look at beyond just the individual site selections, what else is going to be within the document. Within phase one, we'll start to kind of narrow down and look at what the principles, acquisition principles are. And we'll also start to look at what are some of the considerations for other categories other than just new parks and trails. So how, is it feasible to look at existing parks and trails that are maybe potentially better managed under this service? Are there existing NGOs or protected areas that are maybe better managed under this service? And so just kind of flush that out a little bit in phase one. Into phase two, as I said earlier, we'll be looking to really refine that evaluation criteria tool, which looks at all the different values in selecting, doing our acquisition process selection. So looking at the environmental values, recreation, culture values, and community and social values, and weighing each of those values. As we get into phase three, that's where a lot of the real deep dive goes into some of the other components of the document. So we'll be looking at all the land acquisition processes. So what are the processes for how local governments bring forward options for consideration? What are the processes for opportunistic situations or opportunities? What's the process for NGOs, existing parklands, donations? All those kind of things will get flushed out in phase three. Also in phase three, we'll be looking at our acquisition recommendations, and then through there, we'll start to flush out our funding strategy as well. So in terms of the document development costs, the proposal from Lanark was in at $70,600, which is under our $75,000 we budgeted. So we're in good stead for that. There are a few cost unknowns at this stage. Some of the GIS mapping and spatial analysis work is still a little bit to be determined as we kind of start the process. So we don't really know how in depth that spatial analysis work needs to be right now, but we'll find out soon enough. So there may be a little bit of cost unknowns there. Into phase 3, the proposal here doesn't include real estate or land evaluation costs. So that'll get flushed out a little bit in phase 3 once we know a little bit more about the sites. And then that's going to kind of inform our funding model costs. So on that, happy to take any questions and do the best I can to answer any.
Thanks so much for that. Questions, directors? Go ahead, Director Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. All looks good, well planned out. In phase 1, sorry, I have the note here somewhere. Yeah, developing the candidate sites. Can you give a bit more detail on what that might look like? And will you have Comox First Nation in all the phases, so will they be involved in actually presenting candidate sites as well?
Yeah, through the chair. So we will be looking to go to Chief and Council in July. And at that point, we can, I think, really better understand how they wish to be engaged through the process. So at this stage, there is a point for them to be engaged at each of the phases, but they may wish to be more engaged or less engaged. So I think at that July meeting, we'll be able to flush out some of that engagement a little bit more. But I think as the proposal is laid out now, we would flush it down into our key candidate sites, and then we would be presenting those to Comox First Nation as here's kind of where we're thinking about our 8 priority sites. Do you have any feedback on that? Are we off the mark? Are there things that need to be taken off the table? Do they have interests that they want to have added onto those lists? So
yeah, that was my query, whether there would be an opportunity for them to present ideas on that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Director. I don't see any other lights, so maybe I'll ask my question. So there's in the strategic plan, there's a list of the sort of filters we're going to use for these acquisition list. But there's nothing in there around cost. So, and some sites I imagine will be already purchased and we won't have the cost of purchase, but we'll have the cost of management. And how will the cost be used in that initial filtering, or will it not be used in that initial filtering? Like we might just want an open list and then talk about the costs later in a different phase, or how are we conceiving that?
Yeah, thank you to the chair. I think it's going to be a little bit fluid and iterative, I think, at the start. So as we start to look at maybe some of the other considerations for acquisition, whether those are like existing protected areas that may be better housed under the Regional Park Service, whether it's looking at new acquisitions or not, I think that's going to start to play out a little bit in phase 1. But there is a cross criteria, I believe, within the evaluation framework also. But I think as we go through it, I think we want to try to keep our eyes on the prize. Like we want to have, what is it that we really want as a region to be protecting under this service? And then we can cost that out through the funding strategy at the end. But I do think that there's going to be a bunch of back and forth at the start about costs and what's kind of realistic and how we can maybe get some early wins.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, seeing none, I guess we can wrap up. We thought we'd need more time. And so now we're early, but that's fine. We can all take a little break. Now we're early, yeah. Not an hour, just a bit. So I could take a motion to adjourn. Oh, didn't we vote? Yeah, I think we did. Thank you. Seconder for that adjournment? Thank you. And anyone opposed to that adjournment? No. Thank you.